Hello Year 6. I think I should also say hello to some of the parents. I've heard some of the parents are watching story time as well. It's brilliant to be back to read you story time again. I have to apologise first before I start off reading the story. I didn't get a chance to upload story time towards the end of last week, and that was mainly because I was at school on a training course. And it was quite difficult to sort of find the time to do that. So I apologise, but this week you will get story time and I will be doing it every day, and we will finish the Yark. We've only got a little bit left, just a few pages left of the story. Now, it's been a while since you were here with me for story time, so I just thought it would be really good to recap the story. So we started reading the Yark, and we've done about 9 chapters now. And at the beginning we met this monster who eats children and was really hungry and on a search for his next meal. And I don't know if you can remember the name of the first child that he encountered, and it didn't quite work out, and where she was from. So yes, she was Charlotte and she was from Provence. And it didn't quite work out because he didn't get the reaction that he was expecting. She wasn't at all afraid of him. And so he went on from there and ended up meeting Lewis, who in England. And he thought he'd eaten Lewis, but actually had eaten Jack, who was a really naughty child. And as you know, the Yark has a big allergic reaction to it, and ends up then smashing into a lighthouse, and that's where he met Madeline. And it was a really lovely part in that story where his relationship with Madeline blossomed, their friendship grew, and she sort of accepted him as he is. And but he was struggling with his instincts to want to eat Madeline, but at the same time, obviously, he's got this friendship that has developed, and he was really torn, and it was coming out in his artwork. And in the end, he made a difficult decision, and he chose to leave her because he wanted her to remain safe. And I think that's where we finish the story. So we're reading chapter 10 today, The Wild Children. The birth of a baby is always an important event. The child's arrival into the benevolent world of people is rightly celebrated with cigars, champagne, and for the lucky ones, the opening of a savings account. But how fleeting is the golden age, because with the passing of the years, it becomes impossible not to admit that the child loses much of its charm. Physique and personality deteriorate with each birthday. Time thickens, disfigures, stupefies. Gosh, that is a lovely sentence. Time thickens, disfigures, stupefies. I mean, it's very, very expressive, that in terms of showing sort of a negative way of looking at it, of the passing of time. And whose fault is that? It's the fault of the beast that grows within the child, like a weed taking over a garden. The age of reason marks the start of this spectacular deterioration. So the age of reason, by that they're referring to when you can sort of start thinking and making choices between right and wrong. So that's the age of reason. The faded cherub begins to ask questions, express ideas, and negotiate agendas. Capricious, gluttonous, and none too hygienic, the growing child's taste for raucous music and faddish clothing is an inconvenient and costly burden. Yes, the golden age is fleeting, and when cooing and baby talk have faded away and parents are left with the prospect of a pimple-faced teenager, abandonment becomes necessary in order to preserve pleasant memories. And so it is that a considerable number of children are abandoned every year in forests. In France alone, the number is estimated at 60,000. It is never with a light heart that parents hand over to Mother Nature the fate of their progeny. But they'll always find consolation in the resale of clothing and toys, a profit that will allow them to enjoy a few days of well-deserved rest and relaxation. Lost in the depths of the forest and left to their own devices, these unfortunate wretches gradually return to their natural state. Far from school, they forget language and express themselves instead in rumbles and grunts of rage. By observing them, we can get a basic idea of what humans were like at the dawn of our era. small starving bands in a permanent state of war, without faith, law, or toothbrushes, wandering the forest in search of fresh meat and blood. This observation isn't of great interest because humanity has hardly evolved since the Iron Age. Imagine the excitement of these wild children when they find the dying Yark on a path. The snot oozing from their noses betrays their joy. This colossus will make a succulent treat, and what a windfall to satisfy their thirst for cruelty. Because the little beasts are well acquainted with the Yark's weakness, they know that their wickedness will keep the monster from defending himself, much less from gobbling them up. The Yark denies their presence. The smell of these brats makes him nauseous, but stunned by his fall, he's too weak to escape. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? It's almost like the tables have turned. The hunter is now becoming the hunted. Like a thunderclap, the horde of children falls upon him. There are more than 100 of them to bite, wrench, strangle, cling to his fangs and yank on his wings, trying to tear them off. The Yark roars in pain. My time has come, he thinks with a wave of sorrow and a hint of relief. Why do you think you might be feeling relieved at this moment? I want you to think about that. And so the huge hairy monster stretches out on the ground to let them eat him raw. Certainly he could shorten his ordeal by decapitating his diminutive adversaries with a snap of his jaws. Their venomous flesh would kill him on the spot, but the tender-hearted monster pities his assailants. Would they be so nasty if they hadn't been abandoned? Would they be so cruel if they had ever truly been loved? And then the Yark thinks of all the children he's eaten, and as if to gain some smidgen of forgiveness, he finds it hardly unjust to be eaten in his turn. But the wild children don't mean to finish off their prisoner right away, even though they're famished. For weeks they've subsisted on spider droppings. Their thirst for cruelty is more intense than their hunger. The Yark is tied upside down to a tree trunk, with the little beasts dance around their prisoner with blood-curdling cries. A little red-headed boy, as skinny as Nell, approaches the monster. He yanks a few hairs from his own head and stuffs them into the Yark's mouth. The colossus utters a hideous cry. This wisp from a naughty child burns like a white-hot needle. Amused by the spectacle, the children burst out laughing. Then, taking turns in front of the monster, they thrust down his throat small portions of their body, knee scabs, torn off toenails, nose boogers, and things like that. Oh dear. How are you feeling about the Yark right now? I mean, are you feeling a bit of pity for him? Sadness? Are you quite happy actually that he's getting his just desserts, as that's the phrase? The children are careful not to feed him more than minuscule doses of poison. It would be a waste to kill the Yark straight away. For a torture session to be fun, it must be drawn out. All night, the infernal celebration goes on. At the end of his strength, the monster can no longer so much as groan. He tells himself that by dawn it will all be over. Only a few hours to go, he thinks, before these noxious imps will have finished me off. But as his strength leaves him, an image surges up before his eyes. Madeline's face appears in all its loveliness. Her smile wipes away his suffering. Her memory stamps out his sorrow. And so the Yark no longer dreads the hours that remain until dawn. So that's the end of chapter 10. And actually we've only got very few chapters left, to be honest. I think we could finish the story perhaps in the next session or the session afterwards. So we've come to the point in the story where he's actually really, beaten and sort of battered and, at the mercy of these young children, these wild children who've been abandoned, who are perhaps quite angry and sort of hell-bent on sort of taking some form of revenge. I wonder what you think will happen next. I want you to think about that, because the poor Yark, he hasn't had the greatest of time, has he? So I know many of you made predictions about the story early on when we first started reading, but think about what might happen and how it might finish. And I will see you in the next story time. Have a great day, Year 6.